is All For You Stories. Real stories to get you to think different so you act different. Let's go. The man behind the church. Lee had learned a lot in his life, and it pretty much boiled down to two pillars. First, to live a happy life, you have to forgive others and yourself. Second, if you were to be a great person, you probably had big hands. I'll get to the forgiveness part later, but let me explain the big hands for now. Lee used to have a job that took him worldwide. He worked on movies and became known as one of the best boom men in the field. He came across many famous people, but the sports celebrities left the most significant impression on him. One day, as he worked on the set, he met a famous basketball star he admired since he was a child. He got to shake his hand, and Lee felt like he had put his hand into a pillow. His hand swallowed his, making Lee feel like a child. This also happened when he met a famous baseball player, and again with a boxer known for his fast hands and strong left hook. The experiences left Lee with the firm conviction that you had to have big hands if you were to be great. Lee's life turned out to be far from great. Because of some bad decisions and bad luck, Lee lost his job and good reputation. Soon after, he found himself in rehab, out of rehab, back in rehab, and eventually out of rehab and living on the streets. He lost the best woman he had ever known and completely severed the relationship between him and his 2-year-old daughter. While his daughter became a teen and eventually a woman, Lee lived on the streets, ultimately settling in a secluded alley behind a church. The first few years he lived behind the church, it had some long name he could not remember. The pastor was an older gentleman with several nice cars and dressed more like a pimp than a preacher. He had a beautiful wife who seemed to get younger as the years passed. For the entire time he lived there, only 3 people at the church ever spoke to him. Once, the pastor told him not to get too close to his car. Another, a lady mumbled something he could not understand. And the last time, a child who had not yet been taught to ignore him said hello. The membership of the church gradually decreased and eventually closed for good. For whatever reason, 2 of the pastor's cars were left in the parking lot and was stripped down to a few screws and pipes. The lot remained vacant for almost a year before being taken over by a young pastor who did things differently from the previous pastor. He spent the first month cleaning up all around the neighborhood and reached out to meet whoever he could, including Lee. When they first met, Lee shook his hand and immediately noticed how his hand drowned in the preacher's. Lee and the church became neighbors. They gave Lee blankets in the winter, water in the summer, and conversation in between. They treated Lee like a person and made it clear he could come inside the church whenever he wanted. It took a while, but Lee accepted his invitation. He came inside where the people talked to him and treated him like a regular person. They let him sit in the front of the church and sang a song to welcome him and a few other visitors. Lee smiled inside. For the next year, Lee became an occasional member, going inside once a month or two. Still, the members of the church remembered his name and included him in every outreach they had. Although he never officially became a member, the church changed Lee's life. Not only did he learn about Jesus and how he loved him, but he also realized how he still had a life to live. Even though he had wasted decades, the chance still existed for him to make things better. So after a long talk with the pastor and praying for the first time he could remember, Lee decided to take the most significant risk of his life. With the help of something completely foreign to him, Instagram, they located his daughter, who lived about an hour away. The next thing he knew, Lee sat on the passenger side of the pastor's old Honda Accord on the way to see her for the first time in almost 30 years. The pastor and Lee did not speak on the way. Instead, Lee wondered how he would answer questions he did not know the answer to. So much of Lee's life had gone by that he did not remember. He did not remember because he had not lived and had only existed. How could he explain a life he had not lived? When they arrived at his daughter's house, nothing went as expected. His daughter ran to him before he got out of the car. She hugged him and would not let him go. They eventually made it inside, where Lee met her husband. The pastor left to do something he probably did not have to do, while Lee and his daughter talked for the first time. If she wanted an explanation from Lee, she never asked him for it. If she had feelings of anger for him, she never showed it. For the entire time he sat with her, all she wanted was to talk to her daddy. Lee moved out of his alley and into a spare room in his daughter's house. Over the next couple of years, Lee and his daughter had some difficult conversations. He explained all that he could and apologized for what he could not. But his daughter forgave him, and her forgiveness helped him to understand that Jesus forgives him too. This is what eventually allowed Lee to forgive himself. Lee had a family now, a family that was with him when he got baptized, a family who held his hand when he found out the seriousness of his untreated diabetes, a family who sat by his side as the diabetes took his life. But he did not go before shaking the massive hand of his grandson, Ezekiel. Thank you for listening. Please like, subscribe, and do what needs to be done. Peace.